The Ink and Paint Club podcast is intended for mature audiences. I know we're usually talking about kids' cartoons and stuff, but there's going to be naughty language. Anyway, listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to the Ink and Paint Club podcast, your weekly home for animation reviews and discussions.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Ink and Paint Club podcast. I'm your host JD, and joining me once again is the lovely Mr. Matt.
Thank you for having me for the grand finale of Fight Month.
Fight Month!
Get ready to brawl. Round one, fight.
I've been waiting for this day.
Get over here! Game set! Perfect!
So, you'd expect, with Avengers coming out this past weekend, we'd do something like Marvel or Avengers related, but that'll be next week, so. But yeah, we are going to be wrapping up our Fight Month theme this with our fourth installment, and this time we're going to be tackling the Street Fighter 2 animated film.
When you really think about it, doing this episode does tangibly relate it to Marvel this week, because it is Street Fighter, and they've had plenty of crossovers with Marvel.
That's true. So it's tangentially related.
Yeah.
All right, I dig it. Ryu's fought Iron Man.
He has. Many times.
Yeah.
I've heard the latest installment's not so good.
Yeah, I heard Infinite was kind of okay-ish, but, So yeah, we're dipping back to the 90s once again, which I think pretty much all of the stuff we've covered in this, except for like Power Stone maybe. I don't know when that came out exactly, but
Power Stone's like early 2000s, but early 2000s is just really late 90s.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is from like I think 94 or something.
Yeah.
Christ,
1994.
I was like 3 years old when this came out.
Yeah, same here.
So yeah, we're gonna it's another I don't know if this is exactly an OVA, because this is like 2 hours long compared to
this is a straight up movie. Like, I think this is produced and released as a movie. It's not like the Tekken thing we reviewed at the beginning of the month, where it was two parts of an OVA stitched together into a movie.
Right.
Like, for direct to video, like this was actually released in theaters, I believe.
I think I was reading like in some parts of Europe, and I think maybe in Australia it was, but in America we just got a straight to video release.
First off,
go.
How familiar are you with Street Fighter? I'm not sure if we might have mentioned this in one of the other episodes. I've been trying to make it a point to see like how familiar you are with the series that we're reviewing the media of.
Sure. In terms of like knowing who the characters are, I'm very much more familiar with Street Fighter than pretty much anything else we've talked about. Okay. I embarrassingly have Street Fighter 4 for the 3DS. And
that's not embarrassing. It's portable.
It is, and I've just heard people go like, it's like Street Fighter Easy Mode because they mapped all the special moves to the touch screen. You can just press a button.
That's right. No, that's rad though. I mean, who wants to remember input commands when you can just hit a button and have it do it for you?
It's true. And for someone like me who is, unless it's Smash Brothers, I am awful at fighting games.
Right.
It makes it easier for me, and that's not even to say that doesn't even. I'm still awful at Street Fighter. Don't get me wrong. Even with it on easy mode.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I knew who all the main characters of Street Fighter, like everyone in this movie, I knew exactly who they were.
All the 90s, like all the classic 90s era Street Fighter characters.
And I know a couple of the, like the newer characters like C Viper and I know her name. I've drawn her before. The the purple chick that's like
Jury.
Jury, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I know them, and then there's that weird like hat guy that was introduced in 5 recently.
Fang?
Yeah, that guy. He's like
that
he has
was
like
his
poison
name.
powers or something.
Yeah.
So I have a smattering of Street Fighter knowledge. I don't dick about the plot of Street Fighter other than the fact that M. Bison runs a terrorist organization. That's about all I know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and this is funny. I didn't know this until I was reading up on, like, after because I've seen this movie before, and but I haven't rewatched it in a very long time. This is your first time watching it, right?
Yeah.
Right. So this is my first time rewatching it, like, in a very long time. I didn't know that like this movie is based on Street Fighter 2. Like, it was released in '94. It was before, like, Street Fighter 3 was a thing. It was before Street Fighter Alpha was a thing, and I didn't know that this movie directly influenced the Street Fighter Alpha series. Like, the Alpha series takes a lot of its inspiration from this movie.
Yeah, I think from what I read, that this movie is kind of like in between Street Fighter 2 and Alpha, I think. Something like that.
I mean, I don't know that the events of the movie are really canon in the game.
Right, yeah.
Canon, but Alpha takes and like Alpha's canon, and then that's Alpha's takes some of its story elements and inspiration from
Sure,
the movie.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm maybe just a little bit more savvy on Street Fighter than you are. Like, Street Fighter wasn't the series I grew up with. I already mentioned, like, I was a Mortal Kombat kid growing up. But I knew of Street Fighter. You know, I played it in the arcades. Like, the game I've got the most time on is probably Street Fighter 3. I had a friend who owned it, like, on the original Xbox, and we played it there. But then also, back when I was going to community college, we had an arcade on the premises there, and
Nice.
we had Third Strike there, and so we'd play a lot on there too, which was really neat.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, like I know a lot of the characters. I don't really know, like, most of my exposure to Street Fighter stuff is through non-Street Fighter stuff, like Marvel vs. Capcom or Smash Brothers or that sort of thing, or, like, you know, fan stuff, you know, fan art, fan videos, or just watching, like, you know, YouTubers playing fighting games, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I will say, just as a quick side note, having Ryu in Smash Brothers actually made me kind of get the fighting game mechanics a little bit, because it, like, simplified it down. Like, like, I get that I know how to throw a Hadouken in regular Street Fighter now because it's the same in Smash Brothers.
Were you able to pull off a Dragon Punch before Smash Brothers?
I can pull off the Hadouken with regular commands in Smash Bros. And I can pull off the bigger fireball, which I think they said it was, like, borrowed from Dhalsim or something.
Right.
But I can't do, like, a manual Shoryuken or the his spinning kick that no one can pronounce.
The Tatsumaki Senpukia.
All right, fuck me then.
You hear it enough times playing Smash, you'll learn what to call it.
Right. So yeah, like, I know how to do quarter circle stuff, kinda, but if it gets too complicated, I'm like, nah.
Not
about that life. So yeah, this movie is I'll say, of all the things we've watched, I think in terms of quality, it's probably the best thing we'll be reviewing this month.
Yeah, no, like, because it was produced, like, as a movie and not as an OVA, like, the animation quality on this is top notch. Like, it's the fighting sequences are all really, it's funny that, like, we started the month with Tekken and then we end the month with Street Fighter, and, like, the comparison between the two is, like,
night and day.
Like the first fight, like the first 2 minutes of this movie, like that first fight scene between Ryu and Sagat is, like, better than the entirety of the Tekken OVA. Like, it just blows it out of the water.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, seriously, like, because I mean, I don't even remember, like, we mentioned on that episode, but just the fighting in the Tekken movie was like so unmemorable because they're just, even though they're just doing basic martial arts, like they're not doing like anything cool, like,
Right.
and that just is down to Tekken's whole deal. Like, if you know what would have made the Tekken movie better is the reason why this, like, the Street Fighter movie works so well is because you're used to seeing Street Fighter as, you know, like a two-dimensional, like hand-drawn, like it emulates that style very well. If they would have just gone all out and done a whole CGI thing for Tekken, like in that old CGI, like it would have been dated as hell, but it
Like
might have had,
reboot
its charm.
era, reboot Beast
Yeah.
Wars era with CG.
Yes, like it might have been. It would have been more memorable that way.
Oh my god.
But yeah, the quality on this thing is just so good. Like, all the fight sequences are really good. Even the dub, I think, is pretty passable. Like, you know, it's pretty fun.
For a 90s for mid 90s English dub of I'd say it's pretty on the upper level of being good.
Yeah. I didn't look up the voice cast for this one like I did for the other episodes, but like I know one of the voice actors off the top of my head. Fei Long is voiced by Bryan Cranston.
Is he?
Yes, because back in the 90s, Bryan Cranston was dubbing a lot of anime.
Oh, okay.
So that was pre Malcolm in the Middle, pre Breaking Bad, like just trying to get work. Bryan Cranston just dubbing some anime, like it's pretty rad.
Son of a bitch, it is.
Yeah.
Weird. Man, I was looking at the voice cast list and I completely passed over that name.
That's he's like the most notable one on there.
Yeah. Because the only other two names I recognized were obviously Steve Bloom, which was weird.
Right.
Which is weird
he's
because
a T-Hawker.
I recognized him as a driver. I was like, holy shit, that's Steve Bloom. But I looked at it as like, oh, he's also T-Hawk, and I did not even realize.
To be fair, T-Hawk's only in this for like
A hot second.
Yeah. No, so that's another thing to this movie's credit. So where the Tekken movie, like, it only focused on like a handful of characters and had a bunch of them just make sort of, they're technically cameo appearances, but that's like even less than that. They're like cardboard cutouts.
Yeah, they're standing in a
don't-
group for one shot, and that's all you see. Of
Yeah,
them.
and like a bit at the end too. But like in this movie, like the whole cast of like
Of Street Fighter,
Street
2,
Fighter
yeah.
2. Yeah, the whole cast is here. Some of them get a little less screen time than others, but they're all here. They all talk. They all fight, and like all the fights are like, you know, pretty developed and everything. So it's like, yeah, like I said, just another way that because that Tekken movie wouldn't have happened without this movie, and it's just so apparent that they were trying to rip it off, and they just did a terrible job of doing it. And then another aspect of them ripping it off was, I mentioned in the Tekken episode, is like they went for that alternative grunge soundtrack,
Okay, yeah.
which they did here.
I
but they did a lot better.
definitely wanted to talk about. So, whereas Tekken ends with a flippin' Offspring song, bands like Korn and Alice in Chains are
Yeah, and Silverchair.
right.
Just like
Like,
yeah,
there's just a scene of when Ken's driving in his car and they play "Them Bones" by Alice in Chains.
Yeah,
What
you
the
know
fuck
what?
is
That
this
was
movie?
that was what made me watch this movie as a kid. Like, I caught it on TV somewhere, and I love Alice in Chains, and so when I heard Them Bones playing on Ken's radio, I was like, what? Like, that was so rad. Like, you know, I heard it like on MTV and stuff, but like I would never expect to see it like in a cartoon. I was like, oh well, shit, maybe I'll check this out. And then like, yeah,
I especially just love that scene because he's like very
Let's get married,
very
huh?
casually proposing marriage while this just like grunge song is playing.
yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Pretty much every character from the game gets at least one like pretty notable fight. You only see Dalsim like once in this thing where he's fighting E Honda, but that fight is pretty well put together. I mean, you even like Dalsim's not doing those things where he can like throw his hand halfway across an arena.
You know what? I think he is. It's just the angles they went with didn't quite demonstrate it that well.
Yeah, but I mean, I still think they showed off his like kind of rubbery kind of thing where like E Honda's got him at a bear hold and he just like kind of noodles his way out of it.
Yeah. But I mean, like all the characters are doing like their specials and junk. Like Blanca's electrifying himself. Zangief's doing pile drivers.
Oh, that was the other thing.
Doing the kicks.
Zangief and Blanca don't really have much to do with the plot. They just kind of show up for a fight. That's it.
Hey, you know what though? That's better
That's
than
fine.
the Tekken movie did. I'm gonna keep on going back to reference the Tekken movie because the Tekken movie is garbage compared to this. Like, because it's just they tried. No, they didn't even try. They were trying to make a quick buck. That's what they tried at.
Yeah.
And when you look at what they tried to rip off, and it's just this one is so much better. It's so good.
Yeah. But yeah, like you were saying, like everyone pretty much does their special moves. And I do think it's kind of funny where it's like in a video game when someone yells out a special move, it's like, oh, but you know, it's a video game and stuff. But like when like Ryu's just doing a spinning kick and he says the line, or when just out of nowhere, Guile has superpowers and could do a sonic boom when he is shown at no point up to this point in the movie that he could do that.
I mean, to be fair, the other characters didn't really have lead-up moments to them doing specials either.
I mean,
it doesn't need explanation. Everyone knows that Guile can throw a sonic boom and do a flash kick.
Like M. Bison doing his psycho moves and stuff. I mean, he kind of like says, "Oh, I have psycho powers." So it's like when he starts doing like weird psychic shit. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then like, well, you know, Ken and Ryu have been like training in the woods for 10 years, so it's like, sure, they could throw a Kamehameha, why not? But just this beefy army dude just out of nowhere just like throws a sonic lightning disc out of his arms. It was cool. I liked it.
Okay, I did want to go back just to kind of talk about a little bit of the production of the movie that I found out.
Yeah.
We already talked about the music, like the licensed soundtrack, but the actual score of the movie, I'm not sure if you saw this, but it's done by Corey Larios and John D'Andrea. I hope I did those names right. But these are the same pair that did the score for the Baywatch show. Which honestly, given the time and place, like, yeah, no, that fits.
That's awesome.
And then also, I looked up the studio that produced this. It's I'm not sure if it's pronounced Studio TAC or Studio TAC, but I looked up their other productions, and just the most notable ones that came off to me, just because some of the stuff played like on Kids WB, I think. But Fighting Foodons, Beautiful Joe, and they also did some work on the Superman the animated series and Road Rovers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so pretty interesting resume there.
Yeah, that is a lot of interesting stuff. Very varied resume there.
I mean, this is the best thing they ever did for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I like the Superman animated show, so.
No. Superman show's good too, but I think they did probably limited animation.
Yeah, it was probably just helping out with some scenes or something.
It's kind of like there's a specific scene from Batman the Animated Series, an episode with like Clayface, where like at the very end where like he's transforming to like a bunch of different stuff. And I know I off the top of my head can't tell you who did it, but I know I think like the same studio that did Akira did that sequence. So like Warner Brothers is no stranger. Warner Brothers is no stranger to sort of licensing stuff out overseas. I mean, you know, technically it's all done overseas, but I mean, it's very specific bits of animation, like the really quality stuff. Like you can tell, like when they have them specifically doing it.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, basically, this movie's just like Ryu is doing his travel and wandering thing, and then
he's a fight hobo looking for the next fight.
He's a wandering hobo.
Yeah.
And Cammy does show up for a hot second here, and
she shows up and kills somebody and then gets arrested.
It's true,
but she's mind controlled at the time though. She's one of the she's working for. Oh, okay, so that was the thing. They call the terrorist organization in here Shadow Law.
Yeah,
which kind of surprised me because I'd always known it as
Shadowloo.
Shadowloo, yeah. But honestly, I think Shadow Law sounds a lot radder.
Yeah.
It's like they're imposing their shadow law. Like, what the fuck is Shadowloo? Like, it reminds me of, like, when I hear Shadowloo, I think of, like, ABBA. I think of Waterloo. Like,
yeah. Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was just, like, early 90s when, like, a lot of Street Fighter stuff, or just a lot of canon wasn't, like, set in stone yet. So it's like,
right.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, God, it took them, like, until Street Fighter 4 to have a definitive answer as to who the hell trained Ken and Ryu.
Right. Kind of related to that, obviously there's the whole thing where Vega, M. Bison, and Balrog, all their names are all cycled around.
They're the American, yeah.
Yeah, which I thought was funny because other than putting a voice track over this and obviously putting in the American songs, they didn't, like, do any editing to this movie. Like, all the Japanese credits are still on the screen. But the big...
Yeah, at least in the copy that I watched, it was, I mean, you probably watched the same YouTube video I did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure if, like, the actual cut of it's, I mean, it probably is.
I think so.
Yeah.
But what I thought was funny is that because they didn't do any editing, there's a scene where they're flipping through M. Bison and his cronies and stuff. So they literally say it's like, oh, this is Balrog, he's a boxer and stuff, but the screen still says M. Bison.
Oh, does it really? Oh,
yeah,
I didn't notice that.
And Vegas still says Balrog.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. I totally skipped. I didn't miss that part.
Yeah, I was like, that's funny. You guys didn't change anything, but that's okay.
I mean, if for the 90s, it's a lot of work to go around, especially like a theater level or like, you know, like that level of production to like edit that stuff out. Like in the 90s must have been costing a pretty penny.
So I think there are a couple different versions of this, from my understanding. So there's like a PG-13 version that's like a little less has some cuts in it, like some of the, like, it's saying that some vulgar content and whatnot got cut, and then there's like I think it's saying that like in 2006 they put like the uncut version.
2016, yeah. As far as I know, the PG-13 cut, which is like the cut that's been most circulated around, up until like 2016, where they finally did like a full Japanese cut of the movie with like the dub and everything.
Yeah.
As far as I know, the only difference is that they cut down. There's a shower scene with Chun-Li.
Okay.
And she's naked, like.
I just want to like say there's a good like 3 minutes where it's just a gratuitous shower scene with Chun-Li, and it just gets like more and more titillating as it goes on. It's like, okay, Chun-Li's in the shower, great. And for some reason, like, it goes from cut of Chun-Li in the shower, cuts to outside, because the whole scene's leading up to like Vega like coming at her, but it just goes from like, oh, Chun-Li's in the shower, oh, here's her butt, like, okay, and then it starts panning up, and then it's just like, it just hard cut, and it's just straight up Chun-Li's tits.
Yeah.
Just right in your face.
Oh no, the fan service in this is real. Like, even besides the shower scene, I mean, there's shots of Chun-Li and Cammy in this movie that are just like really fan servicey.
The whole fight scene between Chun-Li and Vega is like she's doing it in underwear and a shirt.
Which I want to say,
doing upskirt shots.
Beyond the fan servicey bits of that scene, that is probably like the best fight scene, like, in the movie.
Dude,
just alone, just for the fact that Chun-Li picks up a fucking couch and throws the whole thing at Vega. Like, it's amazing.
No, like, I'm like really impressed with like for the whole like first half of that fight, Vega is just like he's one-siding that fight for the most part.
Oh, he does the work. Like, I mean, Chun-Li has to recover in the hospital for the rest of the movie after this fight. Like, he gets his shots in.
But yeah, I just love, like, after she throws the couch, she just starts wailing on him and just like does her spinning bird kick into it, and then like stomps and twists on his face.
Oh, yeah.
And like shit. But yeah, that fight scene especially, I think was really well choreographed because like they're literally just jumping off the walls at each other and being able to follow that fight, because that is one thing I don't like a lot, especially modern films, is when there's a fight scene, I have no idea what's going on half the time because camera's shaky, and it's cut weird, which obviously it's a lot easier to map this stuff out in animation rather than live action, but
you know what? Here though, like in comparison to a lot of anime that came like after it, like, you know, like 2000s onward, basically. You know what I really don't like about like a lot of the fight scenes nowadays, and this transcends just anime. This happens a lot in cartoons too. They do this shaky cam thing that like while the action's happening, that the camera just sort of moves on its own. Like, I know they must have like a script or something for that sort of follows the action, but like I'm not a fan of it. I don't like it, and I'm always fortunate when I find a bit of animated, you know, fights that don't use that, because it's like you can actually, I mean, you can follow it in the other ones too, but I don't like how it looks.
I think
like,
it's a little easier to follow in this way.
Yeah, the only series that I think did it even marginally well was Avatar, and I think they were the ones that kind of, I'm not sure if they pioneered it, but it was like the first series that I remember watching that did that shaky cam stuff, and like it's okay there, but like anything that came after is just like, yeah, I'm not a big fan. So yeah, I'm glad that this movie doesn't do it, and it's like yeah. Also, just to compare this fight scene that happens in this bedroom, like one of the best in the movie, compared to the Tekken movie, where they fight for 30 seconds in a bedroom and then they fire a rocket launcher into it. And it's just awful in comparison.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they're like, oh, well, we got to have a bedroom fight scene. They did in Street Fighter.
Yeah.
Except we don't got the budget or the
the
know-how.
And honestly, that's another thing about the fights that I like, is that they're not quick. Every fight gets a good amount of time to play itself out. Like the one between E Honda and Dalsim is probably a good, you know, almost 3, 4, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
The whole fight between Vega and Chun-Li, you know, it goes on for a while, but it's not like so long where you get bored of it, but it's like enough that like
it's just right.
It paces itself really well, at least in the fight scenes. I do think some of the parts where everyone's just kind of standing around talking does kind of drag a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. But I mean, they kind of have to establish some semblance of a plot. I understand.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing that maybe they could have touched up with the English dub, is that I feel like outside of the songs that they inserted, or you were saying that the Baywatch guys, so they redid the entire score for the American dub?
Yeah, and you know, actually I did want to bring this up too. I'm wondering if the Japanese score sort of incorporates more of the iconic like themes from the game inside of it. I don't know that for a fact. I didn't watch that version.
Yeah, so yeah, that was I was kind of weird as like why none of the Street Fighter music showed up. But what I was gonna say is that I'm not a fan of the score of this movie, if only because I don't notice it a lot of the time. Like, I felt like a lot of this movie is really quiet and just has like a lot of ambient sound.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot of the times they're talking and it's like there's not even a little bit of music that's like kind of adding to the emotion of, you know, what's going on in the scene. It just seems really quiet, and like for me, I just kind of get bored if that makes any sense.
I get you. Like, yes, this movie would have been even better if there was like an orchestrated version of Guile's theme blaring in the background during the last fight of the movie. Like, yes, it'd be amazing.
That would have been amazing.
And maybe it is. Maybe it is in the. I don't know if it's like that in the Japanese version.
Might have to do some research.
Yeah.
I will say that I don't remember. I mean, obviously, my memory is terrible, and we did this like at the beginning of the month. I don't remember in the Tekken movie Heihachi being like too present in the movie. Am I right in remember?
He was like in flashbacks, and he was at the very end of the movie, and like a bit near the middle, like right before they start doing the fighting on the island.
But he's not like a persistent.
He's not as persistent as Bison is in this.
Yeah,
movie,
I want to give credit to that, because Bison is just like, they cut to Bison a lot, and it's not. I mean, they give everybody else time to do what they're doing, but they make that what Bison's doing, what he's up to.
Yeah.
And he's a threat through this entire movie, and I think they did a really good job.
So speaking of Bison, I did want to point out like one non-fighting scene in this movie that kind of had me rolling. Like, it's the bit where Bison has abducted Ken, and he's sort of subjecting him to his mind control.
Yeah.
And have you ever seen the videos of the Indian soap operas that like really abuse the screen transitions?
Oh, the glass breaking.
Yeah, like where they just cycle through. It's like an old school YouTube poop or something, where like they're just replaying the same footage.
Oh
over and
yeah,
over,
totally.
Like that scene where Bison's doing his mind control on Ken. Like whoever was editing that scene went ham on the transitions. Like it's really funny.
I was like, I almost can't take this torture scene seriously.
It's actually torture to watch it, so they captured that well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so Bison's really good in this movie. I really like the fight he does at the end. Like that whole fight between he's fighting Guile, then he switches to fighting Ryu and Ken simultaneously.
Yeah, E Honda's there, Balrog's there.
Yeah. And maybe
it's like 3v3.
Maybe I zoned out for a minute. I don't remember why E Honda is there at the end.
Yeah, good.
He's just kind of there. Like,
He-
why is
it
he there?
was,
And like, where's like what happened to Dalsim and Fei Long? Like, where did they go?
Okay, so this definitely the fight definitely did happen like in that same village where Dalsim was, right?
I think so.
So that might have been why E Honda was still there, because I remembered he was giving Ryu some of his fight money or something. So maybe Ryu hadn't quite left yet. I don't know.
Yeah, because I think the reason Fei Long's not there is because I think there was like a line that said like,
well, he was late to shooting a movie. I kind of just assumed he was back on set or something.
Yeah, but I think there was a line where saying like Ryu had gone from Thailand. He'd walked from Thailand to India, which is where I think Thailand is where he was when he met Fei Long, and then he goes over to India, where obviously Dalsim is.
Thought wasn't Thailand? That's where Sagat's from, or Sagat is from.
Sagat.
So I thought maybe I called him. I always call him Saget, like Bob Saget
He's
is a
Bob
joke,
Saget.
and
He's Bob Saget.
Like, Bob Saget, yeah, and like I didn't mean to do that at all during this review.
We're gonna get Sagat to host America's Funniest Home Videos.
America's fightiest home videos.
Fighting. Somebody get on that. We've got the game models. Make it happen.
Oh God, it's gonna Gmod it or
Yeah. But yeah, for whatever reason, he's there. I like that everyone kind of gets a role in that big final fight. Like Guile gets his fight with M. Bison, but obviously that doesn't go too well.
Yeah.
But then obviously Ryu and Ken get to fight him. And I just like off to the side, like Balrog and E Honda are just having their fight, and then just roll off a cliff at one point.
Yeah,
and
then
then
just write them off to focus on the.
and then as soon as
real fight.
the big fight's over, they just kind of come back and they're like, we're good.
Yeah, I think like E Honda has Guile and Balrog like under his arms or something.
He just
if I
climbs
remember
back
right.
up the cliff.
Yeah.
It's like, cool. I guess he didn't die.
God, how did you feel about I wouldn't really call it a cliffhanger ending, but it is a weird thing to end on.
Oh,
you think like
okay.
Bison's done for, they blow up his ship, and then like Ryu, he's the fight hobo back on the road, like looking for the next fight, and then like this 18-wheeler comes up behind him, and who in the driver's seat but Bison, like driving a truck, like, oh, my psycho energy was not enough, time to just run him over.
I actually laughed pretty hard. Just like,
It's so good.
because it's like, they actually set it up as really well. Like, if it's supposed to be a funny moment, it's actually set up really well, because it's like, this truck just comes out of nowhere and it's gonna hit Ryu, and he's like reacting to it, and it keeps flashing in the truck, and at the last second it shows you that Bison's the one driving it, and it's like, this would only be funnier if his other minions were in the seat next to him. And they're all just in there just screaming that they need to run him down.
I'm not familiar with any of the Street Fighter 2 arcade endings, but if it's like a reference to that, like, that's incredible.
I don't know.
If it's not, it's still incredible, because then they didn't base it on anything. They decided for this movie, well, they're gonna have Bison try to run over Ryu with an 18-wheeler, and then, like, that's amazing. Just the idea alone.
It's just so fucking ridiculous, but it's like a perfect way to end that.
Yeah.
It's like, the fight continues.
They blare corn, like, right as the impact's about to happen. Like,
Speaking of vehicles, I'm sad that Ryu never beat up a car.
I was wondering if that was kind of what they were, like, trying to get a reference in, but I'm just like, you never beat up an 18-wheeler in Street Fighter. It was always just, like, some
dude's car.
Beater. Yeah. There's always some beater that they're, like, just beating the shit out of. But yeah, I was kind of wondering if he was gonna, like, land a hit on, but then they cut to the credits. So
yeah.
Didn't know if that was kind of a reference to that.
Right.
I mean, they never had a point where anybody was beating up barrels either. So.
Also, speaking of the ending, I thought it was very kind of strange that at the very end of the credits, there's a message that says, "Hey, go see the live-action Street Fighter movie starring Jean-Claude Van Damme and Raul Julia."
Raul Julia, yeah.
And it just, like, I love that it says that, and it says being filmed in Hollywood. It's like,
they didn't know.
Way to go, Japan.
They didn't know. Honestly, that movie's a fun watch, though. It's better than any of the live-action Street Fighter movies that came out after it.
What else came out besides The Legend of Chun-Li?
Was it just that one? I could have sworn there was one more.
I think there's only 2 of them.
Yeah. Oh, I might be mistaken. Yeah, there was The Legend of Chun-Li. Well, that's still, the point still stands.
Yeah.
It's still better than any Street Fighter movie that came out after.
Yeah, I haven't seen either one of them, but I've heard the one with Raul Julia is entertaining, at least.
It's so good, and I wish this wasn't just a strictly animation-based podcast, because I would love to do an episode on that one.
Maybe we can do another fight month where we do all the live-action video game fight movies.
There's still a lot of animated stuff to cover.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of stuff. So I'm sure we'll do another fight month at some point.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean this Street Fighter movie I am very much on the outside of what Street Fighter is. Like, I know the characters, but I don't know like anything about its lore.
I feel like this boils it down to, like, it's very, like, if you wanted to know, like, the canon or whatever of Street Fighter 2 circa the 90s, like, before anything else that came after that, like, this is a very good sort of summary of that.
Right. I mean, it doesn't really, like, I always thought that Street Fighter was like, like, there's an actual tournament that is why all these guys meet up. And this movie doesn't really go to that structure. It's just like these guys kind of just meet up and then fight. They just meet up by chance, which I think was fine. But I agree. Like, you get the point where you get the basic premise that Ryu is a traveling hobo and Ken's his best friend, and Bison and his cronies run a terrorist organization trying to take over the world, and that's pretty much all you need to know.
Cops, like, yeah.
And then Ken and Ryu throw a joint Hadouken at Bison, and things explode at the end.
They do the father-son Kamehameha, and they blow up Cell, and yeah.
That was great. But yeah, I think this is a very well put together movie, and like, I'm sure if you're a Street Fighter fan, you've already seen this, and if not, if you're just a fan of like good, well put together fight scenes, I think you'd probably enjoy it in that capacity.
Yeah, no, this is I definitely recommend this. Like, this is a must watch for any Street Fighter fan, any fighting game fan, any just, old school Japanese anime fan. Like, it appeals to a lot of different demographics.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, is there anything you want to discuss before we wrap up tonight?
No, I think we... Oh, no, okay, there was one more thing. So this is really weird. I found this out. I read about this a while back, too, but I totally forgot about it until reading up on the movie after watching the movie again. But they did a interactive version of this movie on the Saturn in Japan. Or no, on the Saturn and PlayStation in Japan.
Yeah.
And it's really weird. And, like, it has actually, like, exclusive bits of animation and stuff, but, like, it's so weird because, like, quite literally, I think it's just the movie, but they, like, dragons layer it, or, like, you sort of make split-second decisions to sort of, like, progress the movie.
That's crazy.
It's really weird. Like, I looked up I didn't look up any footage now, but I remembered seeing some, back then, and it's, of course, it's really compressed, like, PlayStation, Saturn.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. FMVs.
FMV on the PlayStation was garbage.
It didn't fare much better on the Saturn, if I remember right, either.
Yeah, probably not.
But still, the idea, I mean, like, it's an interesting concept. Like,
yeah.
It's interesting that it happened and it exists, but I mean, it's definitely not the ideal way to watch the movie.
I mean,
still,
probably not.
No. Just watch the movie and have a PlayStation controller in your hand and just make movements and pretend like you're winning.
Yeah, press a button every now and then and you'll get the same kind of sensation.
Unless it's connected to the PlayStation and then you're accidentally pausing and fast forwarding your copy of the movie. Right. Then don't do that.
Well, all right, guys. I think that does it for us, and yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed this little excursion into fighting games for the past month. I sure enjoyed watching some of this.
Some of this.
Not
the Tekken movie.
Tekken was just like kind of okay. I'd already watched Power Stone and liked it. Mortal Kombat was just I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about that.
I thought it was an entertaining watch, but Street Fighter is the best thing like this whole month for sure. I would rank it like Street Fighter, Power Stone, Mortal Kombat, and then like a bunch of empty spaces, and then Tekken.
Damn.
Tekken sucked.
Oh.
It just sucked.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we ended the month on like something like
on a high note.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad we did this because like otherwise I probably would have never actually watched this movie, and now I have. So
there you go.
Yeah, there we go.
It's always a good excuse.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you for listening, and we'll be back again next week with something. Probably something else. I don't know. Man, it's like 3:30 in the morning. I got brain not work. Well, Matt, thank you for joining me on all this. It was a pleasure having you on, and you've got way more knowledge on this kind of stuff than I do, so I'm sure it was helpful for the listeners.
Just a little bit more, but just doing my research. Well, thank you for having me for the entire month. I've enjoyed recording these and watching most of these, not Tekken.
Well, you're welcome on our show anytime, sir. Yes, thanks again, everyone, for listening, and if you excuse me, I'm going to go pass out. So, we'll see you next week.
Sleep tight, JD. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ink and Paint Club podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can catch a new episode every week. Also be sure to follow us on our Facebook and Twitter so you can keep up with the show. Links are in the description. We'll see you next week.